Tonight on Inner Alchemy Live, navigating burnout for the esoteric and spiritual community with Dr. Gianmichael Salvato. Are you feeling burned out on your healing mission, battling imposter syndrome that dims your light, feeling the pull of spiritual lethargy when you should be soaring? Well, you're not alone. Welcome to our first ever holistic, spiritual, and esoteric wellness virtual town hall and podcast. I'm Gianmichael Salvato. I'll be your host. Now let's do this. Hey everybody, it's Gianmichael. Welcome to our first virtual town hall, as well as the first new episode of the Inner Alchemy podcast. In just a few minutes, I'm going to be bringing in some special guests for us tonight, and I'm excited about this inaugural broadcast because burnout can be a major challenge for those who dedicate their lives to serving others, whether as spiritual practitioners or teachers or authors or thought leaders. And tonight on Inner Alchemy's first live town hall, we're going to ask 5 or 6, I forget how many there were, questions of our panel to spark a productive roundtable discussion on this topic that includes all of you. So remember, the whole idea behind this podcast is to be able to engage with you as well, our listeners and viewers. So make sure that you comment and ask questions. But first, we're going to go ahead and jump in and meet our panel, which means I have to figure out how to get them all here on the screen. This is new broadcasting software to me. So let's just give a shot here and see how this goes. Yeah, that was just absolutely so easy. Now we'll put a little background music on. So just to my right on the screen, hopefully that's how it shows up for everybody else. We've got Reverend Dominic Guerriero. So Dominic, tell us a little bit about your background and your spiritual practice and what you do in this spiritual space.
So I am a Babalorisha of Afro-Brazilian Candomblé, basically a priest. I'm also a tarot card reader and medium, and I do a lot of cleansings and ceremonies for the community.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Next up, we've got Megan Lee Dickey. Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're probably the only one having nice weather at this time. It's storming out here on the East Coast, but you're out in Hawaii.
Right. Yeah, I live in Honolulu, so we have nice weather pretty much every day of the year, all year round for the most part. So yay for that, and it's still daylight where I am because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I am actually in my big girl job, a certified nurse midwife and women's health nurse practitioner. But I happen to have grown up in the Benedicaria tradition, and I am also a professional tarot reader. So that's what I do on the side. So it's almost like, I guess, 2 full-time jobs, one being esoterically based and one being based in the mundane world, which is women's health. I've been doing tarot and esoteric practices for about 27 years now, and I have been in women's health for about 21 years now.
So both areas are serving the community as well. So we're glad you're here. And Dr. Terry Karanen, tell us a little bit about you. We haven't seen you in a couple years on the show, so welcome back. Tell us a little bit about your background and practice.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here on your inaugural night of this new system. I'm a retired minister. I was in various ministries for over 30 years. I served 7 different churches, 3 of them which I founded. And I'm also a licensed social worker in the state of Pennsylvania, but I now have clients literally all over the world, thanks to COVID, because I closed my practice and started working virtually. I'm also a writer, and I've had to deal with what we're calling burnout today. as well as with my clients, as well as with myself. So I find this to be a very interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panelists as well.
Excellent. Well, we're super glad that all of you are here. As Terry just said, this is a special edition, and we're calling the focus of the program tonight Navigating Burnout for Esoteric and Spiritual Practitioners. But really and truly, by extension, spiritual practitioners in this sense means all of you that are watching. Everyone is on or most everyone is on a spiritual path. Most everyone is trying their best to navigate their journey in times that may sometimes feel fraught and lead us to what we think is burnout or crisis situation. And so tonight we're just going to try and unpack that with several questions. And again, if any of you would like to comment or ask questions throughout the broadcast, just go ahead and let us know. I may look like I'm a little distracted at times because the studio space requires me to queue up the questions that we have for tonight, and just we'll. The idea for all of us that are here on the screen, as well as those who are watching, is that this is a conversation. So we're not going to necessarily do the go around the room, type of thing, not an interview, but a real conversation. So anybody of our guests that wants to jump in and offer some thoughts about these 4 or 5 or 5 or 6 questions, go ahead and do that. And so, because I am all about trying to be clever, I decided that since this is burnout, our questions were going to all have burnout related topics. So first we have recognizing the flames. And so my question for our panelists is, how does burnout manifest differently or uniquely for you in your respective field, in the work that you do? And again, that could be the spiritual work that you do, as well as any secular work that you do as well. Because when you're a spiritual practitioner, from my perspective, whatever your secular work is, you're still a spiritual practitioner. So we're taking care of people all the time, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I might share some ideas about that as well in a bit. So anybody wants to go first? Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so burnout in terms of either in a spiritual setting or a secular setting, I think has to do with that feeling of dejection, like you just don't want to do it. And it's not like, okay, I'm having an off day. It's just like you get like almost like a distaste for what's going on. And sometimes it's just, it's just a feeling you have, and or it could be, other things that are going on in life. But it's just like this overall feeling of either hopelessness or frustration or some kind of strong emotion. And I have noticed that among, spiritual workers, on social media, they talk about burnout, but also like the outside events of the world, what's going on in a greater global context, also playing into what's going on in their personal lives or in the lives of their clients.
Yeah, and that makes a difference. Do you find that what's going on in the world in general, it has an energetic impact on you, a draining impact, an energizing impact?
I do feel that, like, especially, during the pandemic itself, there was that feeling, especially those of us that were working in the medical field also, it's like that double like frustration of what's going on in the medical field, but also what's going on spiritually. And now, the pandemic is still there, maybe not as intense as it was, but now there's all these other things happening in the world, like, that have been brought to light. And, with social media, there's no looking away from it anymore. It's like in your face 24/7.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. We have a word for it actually in the professional setting, and it spills over for me in my esoteric setting as well. We call it compassion fatigue. It's just like you can feel, I should care about this situation. Whatever situation it is that you are presented with, whether it's a patient situation in my professional setting, or whether it's a client that I'm doing a reading for that's coming to me with a situation that I'm like, oh my God, I just like, don't just, shut up, you can feel it. And it's like, okay, either I've worked too many days in a row, or I've had too many complex situations in a row that I've had to make these, really high level management type decisions about. And it's compassion fatigue is, I think, a really good word for it in either setting, esoterically or professionally. And I can feel myself slide into that every once in a while. And it's like, all right, I need to step back from whatever. I did it for a while. Whenever I was doing a bunch of tarot readings in a row, actually for an online service, whenever I was in between two practices, I was waiting for my hospital privileges to come through for a new practice I was joining. And I had a period of about 9 months while I was waiting for that credentialing and everything. The process, those of us who've been in the medical field know what a long, drawn out process that is. I had moved to a different state and I was waiting for all of that to go through. And I was doing like a million low cost, like low yield, but high energetic cost readings a day. And there were times when I was like, I can't even turn it on today. I just need to take a day. And I know I'm not going to make any money, but I need to take a day to not do this, because I could feel that compassion fatigue creeping in. And like, if one more person asks me if this guy I just broke up with is going to call me, I am going to just scream or die, or scream and then die or something. Like, I can't. And that's how I know I've reached the burnout stage.
Or die and then scream. That would be even
or
worse.
or something in any order, in both at the same or simultaneously. I don't know, but it's just like I can just feel it. Where I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care if he calls you. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care.
Who cares?
It's not that.
Shut up. It's not that.
Yeah, go away.
Especially when you're working.
Them.
I didn't do this intentionally, but we had a fourth guest, Michael. Was unable, Michael McQueen, my co-host on The Brew, was unable to get on tonight because the storms out in Jersey are really intense right now, and his electricity is flickering off and on. But I did not realize that the guests that I invited were all healthcare and mental health workers.
Yeah.
So these questions.
It's a good group of people to ask.
Yeah, it's my tribe.
Yeah.
It just now dawned on me that that's exactly what happened. And I reached out to a group of other people, but every one of them were as well, and it was not intentional. But like I wanted to comment on what you said, because compassion fatigue is definitely a real thing that we go through, and I'd like to hear. Whether that manifests just in your field of doing the spiritual work, the esoteric work, or if it can be something that, like, if it's just because, petty little thing, she wants to know if the boyfriend's going to come back, or does it impact you when you're dealing with it, particularly in this environment, politically and socially? You work in women's reproductive health, and deal firsthand with all of the terrors that are going on around the country in that space. And then when somebody comes to you and says, I want to know if my boyfriend's going to come back or my girlfriend's going to come back, does that have an impact on you? Like, there are times I just want to say, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You're worried about that, while there are people who are worrying about whether they're going to live and have access to healthcare. Does that impact you? And we're going to talk a little bit later about how you handle it. But do you find that too? Everyone else too can chime in.
I'm just I'm cracking up while Megan's talking, and I so honor who you are and what you've done. My general practitioner has been Dr. Lorraine Bach, who is a nurse practitioner and was the head of nurse practitioners here in Pennsylvania. But she has been my primary care physician for the longest time. She is not an MD, but she is the person that it takes care of me. And like you were talking about your secular job, all the time that I've been writing and I've been counseling and I've been a minister, and I also had a 25-year practice as a massage therapist and tantric worker. I've also been a flight attendant. So I had to go through the pandemic from the sociological viewpoint of how are we going to get through this with my clients, but then also deal with 200 passengers every time I took off with masks on and wondering if we were going to get something from our passengers or each other.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in ministerial training, I worked in the World Ministry of Prayer at the time that we had in Los Angeles. And invariably at the end of our shift, we could look at who we had talked to, and at least 60 to 70% of what we prayed for or what we counseled about was about stuff that we were going through. And so I find myself often trying to help someone who's going through what I'm going through, which is similar for all of what we've gone through the last couple of years with COVID and the pandemic and with different types of political issues that are going on. And I talk them through that. And at some point, it's like, why aren't you listening to yourself? Or are they paying you to talk to you? Just talk to yourself about this. Because honestly, it's, people do come to us because we're leaders and because they think we have all the answers. And I can't speak for the other panelists, but for myself, I see myself as a mentor. I don't push you into therapy. I don't drag you into recovery. I simply walk beside you and find the path that you have, because I know that you have the answers within you. I can't give you your answers, but I can stand beside you and help you.
But that's so exhausting sometimes.
It is. It's just,
it's so exhausting.
Would you shut like Gianmichael just said, would you just shut the fuck up? Because I'm dealing with, you didn't get your special meal. Well, so what?
Oh God. I'm sorry.
Oddly enough, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a lot of flight attendants that end up leaving and becoming nurses. And there's a lot of nurses who become flight attendants. And it's all about serving people and helping people through whatever they're going through.
That's true.
Fascinating.
Dominic.
So I wanted to say this kind of like on the flip side of that. So like Megan, I've worked in the medical field as a home health aide, but now I'm back in the beauty and skincare industry, which sometimes is kind of like on the surface level, but not always. So I work in a really like affluent area of Manhattan, and some of the clients, I'm not gonna say where, but some of the clients, like, they do kind of have like these very what's the word I'm looking for, like surface concerns, and like, we're talking about like major things and spiritual stuff and political events going on, and just like, oh my God, I don't care what shade of concealer you need, could you just shut up, basically. But then at the same time, I have noticed, working for other retailers in this current one, is that the beauty industry is linked to a lot of spiritual practices because of the use of herbs, because of the use of certain healing techniques and so forth, and the shift towards that in the industry. Like, I remember like a couple of years ago, dragon's blood was in one of the creams or something, and so was frankincense, and everyone's like, ooh, that's, and meanwhile, those of us who are in the know, like, know about these things that have been going on for a long time. But I think any job where you work with the public, it kind of opens up for experiences. Like the other day, I just walked into work, and there was a client, and she's an Ayurvedic. I don't know if I'm saying that right, an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she was. When I walked in, she was giving my boss and one of the vendors and another coworker like crystal. She's like, just reach in the bag and pick one out. And it came with the explanation. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna. And then they saw me. They're like, oh, Dominic's here, so it's like we're gonna see what he picks. And I reach in the bag. The first thing I pick is Iolite, and it's all about like grounding, financial. I know I'm a typical Taurus when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it was exactly what I needed in the moment. So, you wouldn't think that in that space that it seems like everything is about image and surface things, that you can have a profound spiritual experience with someone.
But you really do, because having also come from the spa and salon world, for opening the first medical spa, or one of the first 3 in the country. We, we're Marie Laveau was a hairdresser. We work with people who are coming for beauty, but most times while they're sitting in our chair, what we're actually doing is reaching out to them, whether you want to call that ministering to them, healing them, just being present to them to unlock the beauty that's already there. I mean, because sometimes, let's face it, they have 7 hairs on their head. They want to look like Farrah Fawcett, and they look like a bulldog. You got to do the work if you want them to come back to unlock that inner beauty, because it's a comb, not a magic wand. So I appreciate that. That's just another, to me, that whole industry is a part of wellness care as well. Taking care of your skin, the largest organ on your body. And yes, I did hear it as it was coming out of my mouth. But you're doing wellness care and spirituality. If it's a part of your life, I don't know how you can not bring that to people, even when it's not overt. I mean, I think so often, the people that are attracted to us are attracted because there's that spiritual component in our life. Hopefully, we don't have to say anything about it for them to feel that. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel always, when necessary, use words. And that's kind of a good adage, I think, for any spiritual healing practice or practitioner work. So let's move on to, we've got a comment. Let me go ahead and check that. Okay, that is coming from Ellen. Hello, darling. It's good to see you here. How can we prevent compassion fatigue or burnout? I've experienced this too, and it blindsided me every time. I'm going to ask you, Ellen, to just hold on to that thought, and we'll come back to it in a couple minutes, because we will get there, I promise. But that's a good question, and I'm actually getting not so bad at this thing. All right. So our next question, our next topic, moving toward discussing some of the options, some of the ideas that we might have about Ellen's question, is what unique factors contribute to burnout in your line of work, or as I think of it as, what is it that fuels the fire that can lead to thinking you're burned out? And I'll go ahead and jump in with that just kind of briefly, because in a personal conversation that Terry and I had, we kind of dove into what our perspective was on this. And so I don't want to steal Terry's thunder or let the cat out of the bag too soon on what my ultimate thoughts are about this. But fueling the fire, I think for me, the factors that contribute is when I get sidetracked, when I get out of this moment, where in this moment I recognize that that grace and ease and peace is mine, and is circulating all around me, expressing itself through me, however you want to call that. The times when I'm fueling the fire of so-called burnout is when I'm not in the moment, when I'm either projecting what might go wrong in the future that doesn't exist yet, or when I'm allowing my perceptions, flawed though they certainly must be, of what happened in the past, particularly in the long ago past, or the past that I didn't even experience, that someone else experienced and I was taught, and I'm worrying about, well, what if that happens again? So in both of those situations, the I don't know if I can handle another person coming in and asking me about their boyfriend when I'm talking to people in recovery, in my counseling practice, who could lose their lives. That's worrying about whether I can handle something that hasn't even happened yet. Because in this moment, I know that I can be present to that person and still be present to the person who's in recovery. And ultimately, we're all kind of in recovery for one thing or another. Whether it's chaotic data that we're entertaining in our brains, or acting out on that chaotic data, in a form of addiction, or relationship problems, or job problems. For me, it's all kind of the same. What do you think, panel?
I have to say, with Ellen, first of all, I totally understand what you're saying, and really, I'm compassionate with what you're going through. However, having said that, the question that I have to ask is, why is that your line of work? In our society, we decide that when I was growing up, it's like you get a good education, you get a good job, then you get a good job, and you'll be set for life. And today's people, in the employment situations that we're all in, it's about how many places you've worked for, instead of working for something for 30 or 40 years and getting a gold watch. That's just not the way we are. When I was in Los Angeles years ago, there was a very successful attorney who had spent millions of dollars, in his practice, had made millions of dollars in his practice, very successful, decided after all that he didn't want to do it anymore. And he opened up one of the first Asian fusion restaurants in West Hollywood and was very successful. But people thought he was dipshit crazy that he was doing that. How could you leave all that? What I do is every year, twice a year on my birthday, which is in May, and then toward the end of the pagan year, I look at everything. What serves me, what doesn't serve me. It doesn't matter that I spent 30 years in ministry. In 2019, I decided that was enough, and there were other things that I wanted to do. So it's recommitting. Helps with burnout, if we're going to call it burnout. I have other words for that, but this is one of the things that we have to be really careful of, is taking a step back and saying, is this really who I am? Most of my clients have anxiety or depression problems, and I explain to them that depression is just worrying about the future that isn't here, and anxiety is worrying about the past, which also is gone and you can't do anything about. And it's because we don't stay in the present moment of not who we thought we were going to be or who we want to be, but who are we? And how can we use that to get to where we want to go?
And who are we now, right? It doesn't matter who do we want to be. We can get to that. We can talk about that another time. But who are we now? And is that where we want to be now? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Megan and Dominic, what are your thoughts about the factors that contribute or fuel that fire?
For me, I think what leads me to get into a burnout state is whenever I start to, I guess, blur my own boundaries a little bit. And, I'll pick up that extra shift, or, I'm off tomorrow. It's my only day off, and I have 5 people that want tarot readings, private tarot clients. Sure, I'll get them all in on that only day off because they want it tomorrow and they don't want to wait till next week or the week after. And I'm off, so technically I can do it, even though I really should be taking that time for myself. I'll go ahead and work all of them in, doing that kind of thing where I really just push through my own boundaries that I've set for myself. And I'm knowing that I'm doing it. Like, I really shouldn't do that. That's the only day I have off. I really need to keep that day for myself so that I can recharge and do stuff that I need to do. But instead, I'm going to put 5 private clients in, or pick up an extra shift, or commit to something. So I think overcommitting and just not honoring the boundaries that I've set for myself that's my biggest risk factor.
That's really insightful. I mean, that's really that's moving us toward the next question that I wanted to ask. But really useful for us to take a look at what are the causes. What did I call fueling the fire? A lot of times we might think what's fueling the fire is that client who's whining about the relationship. I'm never going to get another client who wants tarot reading about relationships, because they're going to say he's an asshole about that. That's okay. Yes, I am.
So am I.
Yeah.
It's even on my website. It's on my website. It's very clearly in the FAQs. If you don't want to know about your relationship, don't fucking ask me about your relationship, because I'm going to tell you, and you might not like it.
Yep.
Right.
But so often we think it's that client, and it's not always that.
It's me.
Client.
It's always me.
It's myself.
100% of the time me.
Great.
It's never them. It's always me.
Dominic.
Yeah, and I think I've absolutely done what Megan does. Like, oh, it's my day off, I can do these readings, instead of like maybe going to the nail salon and getting a pedicure or something like that.
Or whatever.
Or
anything. Or nothing.
Or nothing.
Or just doing nothing. Just watching 20 episodes of The Sopranos. Yeah, like whatever. Yeah. Like whatever you want to do.
And we don't, because, and especially here, like on the East Coast, and here there's that hustle culture and mentality. Like, you got to keep going and keep going and going because you got to pay this bill or do this, or maybe you're taking care of kids or elderly relative or something, like, or paying the mortgage or whatnot. What I find helps sometimes with the compassion fatigue, I think that was part of Ellen's question too, like how do you kind of deal with it, is, we've also been that client, maybe with other readers or with our mentors or whatnot. Like, I have been the person to ask my spiritual mentors, like, well, what do I do? He's not calling me back. And like, I've been that person too. And like, so when they come to, I remember, okay, I have been there. I have gone through that feeling of uncertainty, whether it's, about a job, about a relationship, about making a major move in life, and so forth. And so they're coming to us with those questions. And, we have also been there in their position too.
Yeah.
Good point. And a great segue into tending the embers. What self-care practices have been the most effective in preventing or managing your burnout experience? And I'm using that expression very specifically as a segue into the next question when we're going to talk about the burnout experience itself and how do we rekindle the flame? How do we embrace the ashes and rise like a phoenix? But for now, let's talk about the piece that addresses, and I'm going to pull up the comment again from Ellen, because it goes hand in hand with self-care. How can we prevent compassion fatigue or burnout? I've experienced this too, and it blindsides me every time. So what is it that each of us does to sort of do the self-care piece? And I want to add to that and ask, how often do you do it? And I'll go ahead and start with that, because for me, it's about being mindful of all of the places that, as I just said, that I'm not being present. So there are times I can be very present to the people that are in front of me, since most of my work now is done virtually since just before COVID started. It's a matter of being present a lot of times on a computer, but there are other times when I recognize I can't be present to an image on a computer. I need to disengage from the whole electrical, you know, electronic and high tech, and I need to ground, and I need to walk around the yard in, you know, barefooted, or just get out and breathe some fresh air, or just open the windows in my house and sit and just be in that moment. Like somebody said, you don't always have to do something. You know, so those moments, recognizing that self-care is not just a response to a trauma response. It's not, you know, not waiting until we get to the trauma response to have to say, oh, I better disengage, take a mental health day. But saying, you know, I'm committed to me first, and that means scheduling self-care days, scheduling mental health days, saying, you know what, tomorrow, no matter what happens, no matter who calls, I'm going to do this for me. So that's, for me, that's how I try to prevent that compassion fatigue, because I like that phrase so much better than the concept of burning out. And we're going to talk about that, like I said, I promise, later. But I'm actually trying to think of what I'm going to say, because I was going to bring up compassion fatigue, and that's what I get for inviting a bunch of healthcare workers.
Sorry.
We live that every day. So someone else, how do you? What does self-care look like for you? What are some of the maybe a better way of phrasing that question would be, you know, what self-care practices you not only do for yourself, but would you recommend for a client who comes?
I take a tech Shabbat. Shabbat is a Sabbath. And I did this after hearing what Ivana Van Zandt said to Oprah Winfrey, where she said that we talk about being selfish. It's not selfish, it's self-full. She said, remember the scripture where it says that God says, bring here and I will fill your cup over until it's overflowing. She said, you get the overflow. Everything inside the cup, that's mine. That's mine. And if I don't fill up my cup, I have nothing to give you. So during the summer months, the winter, when it's warmer, I go, my family are not nudists. I've been a lifetime nudist. I go to a clothing optional campground for a couple of days. I don't use my cell phone. I leave my tablet at home. You have to do some planning for that if you rely on those things. But I don't even take it out of my car. And I just enjoy nature, and I get completely away. In the meantime, like during the winter time, I take day Shabbats instead of a week or a full couple of days. I take just an afternoon. It's kind of like the what was that? The Writer's Way, taking a play date, you know, or a play afternoon, and just rekindling yourself that way. It's a way for me to get away and to remember why I do what I do. I'll tell other flight attendants, I'll tell them that, you know, they're bitching about the job or about the fact that we don't have a contract or this or that, or this passenger did that, the captain was horrible. And I say, you know, you need to take a couple of days and just go to Paris, or you need to go to, you know, Tokyo or something for a few days. You remember why you have these benefits. And then when you come back, it's like, yeah, that was worth it. And I have to remind myself, not we, but I have to remind myself of why I do what I do. And if I don't have that joy anymore, then maybe it's time for me to make another decision that I might need to make. Similar to what Megan might tell some of her clients. You may not like the decision, but it's what serves you. I'll close with what my dear friend and practitioner, the late Reverend Juanita Dunn used to say. She said, "I don't work for money. I work, therefore I have money." And I stopped taking clients because I needed the money, because every time I thought the client was my source, I reminded myself that I believe in a higher power that is far beyond anything that could be just the client giving me money.
Really good. You know, I gotta say that as someone who's neurodivergent, I thrive with structure. And you know, sometimes for some people it might be more structured than they want or that they're comfortable with, and so they have to find what works for them. But you know, one of the things that saves my butt all the time is that at the end of the day, and I've told students this in the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, in workshops that I do, in counseling sessions, at the end of the day, I take a couple minutes every single day. And for me, I have to journal. And the journaling doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, because I know I can pick it up and I can know what those couple of words meant for that day. So if it's a particularly stressful day, it may only be a couple of words. It might be a little scribble. It might be an image that I draw, or it might just be a single word of profanity. But at the end of the week, I take a couple of hours. At the end of the month, I take a whole day, and at the end of the year, I take a week. And it's the same process during each of those times. But it's those periods of asking myself a series of questions, and then responding to that series of questions with what I actually know, with what I consider my higher wisdom. It's a reminding, it's a talking to myself, just like we said earlier, that so many of the time, Terry said, you know, when we're counseling somebody, or like I'm sure that doing readings, so many times I'll do a reading for someone, they'll thank me, it's just what they needed, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 or 3 days later, something happens in my experience and I need that advice that I just gave them. Right. So, you know, again, that essential unity that I talk about all the time is manifesting itself in the fact that at all times, the right people are in front of me. And that's kind of one of those lifesaver moments that keeps me from feeling that intensity of burnout, even though the compassion fatigue can be, you know, very real and very exhausting, and a real experience. What gets me to the next moment when I can get through it is saying, you know, the right people are always in front of me. And so maybe this pain in the ass is going to ask me questions about their relationship, is there asking the questions for me to give to share the wisdom that was shared generously with me, so that in a few days or a few months or a few years, I remember that I said that, and I remember that I know that. So that's just for me. So thank you, Terry, for that.
It's not rocket science, you know, and it's not brain surgery. I've seen both. You know, it's not that.
Thank goodness.
It's just in the morning, I give thanks for my blessings, and at night, I give gratitude for all the good things that have happened. It's a simple spiritual practice, like you were just talking about. But people go to bed worrying about what happened, and then they wake up worrying about what will happen. And just gratitude and forgiveness and thanks.
I find that also in readings too, like when you're giving a message for someone and then like your ancestors, your guides are saying, are you listening to what you're telling them?
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to apply this back to yourself. It happened on Sunday. I was giving a reading to a client and I was just like, wait a minute. All right, this is exactly what I need to hear from myself. I was like, let me apply. I'm going to write this down. I think, and again, this also relates to medical practice, like spiritual hygiene is a must. Just like in the medical field, hygiene is of utmost importance. I think spiritually, like if you're doing readings and healings or whatever it is, to take that time to cleanse yourself and the space around you, because it's like we're collecting that energy, that feeling. They may have like poured their heart out to you and everything, and you have that that connection with them for that moment, and then you feel drained or tired or fatigued afterwards, and then you need that replenishment. um I'm gonna bring up two examples, one from last year and one from years ago. So there was a in Brooklyn, it was a what we call a misa de investigación in Afro-Caribbean traditions, is when you have like a seance for the spirits, and it was for a young lady, and she wanted to know who her guides were. So she asked the community, all the priests and priestesses, to come or sit around and do the prayers and see what, do you have this spirit? What's going on in your life? And everyone was just giving advice. So one of my friends, who's this really feisty Puerto Riqueña Santera priestess Vaganyu, the volcano Orisha, she just has no filter. She just looks around. She's like, I want you to look around this room and look at all these priests and priestesses here, and not one of them has their shit together. But that's okay, because we are here on this earth to learn and to learn from our experiences. And she's like, when you need to do a cleansing, if you don't even have anything, she's like, grab the leaves outside. She's like, if it's winter time, grab branches, whatever you have that's available. And I think that's something that's in a lot of our ancestral folk practices, using what's around in the kitchen, the garden, and whatnot. And she's like, use that. Another tip that she gave, she said the cheapest and most effective cleansing that, when you really need one, is to go into any church or house of worship or whatnot, and just sit there and talk to the divine and just cry and let all the tears flow, and you have that cathartic moment. And for me, it tends to happen, and I'm gonna talk because Megan mentioned Benedicaria, the Italian craft, the stregoneria. That Christmas Eve for us especially is that liminal time, where the magic happens, when the Malokia prayer is learned, or certain rituals are done. So for me, midnight mass and Christmas Eve, I kind of enter like this state of reflection. I think, okay, what happened this year? And what Terry was saying, what doesn't, it's that period of like, okay, does this serve? Does this not serve? What do I need? And then I end up like crying during the service, and I'm like looking, I'm like, is anyone looking at what I'm doing? And just
everybody
and
cries
just
during midnight mass. That's okay.
It's a powerful moment too. Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. It's packed. It's the most packed mass of the whole year. Is
it
midnight
is,
mass.
yeah.
I remember we had to get there like 2 hours early growing up. Like in my little church where I grew up, we got to midnight mass 2 hours early to be able to even get a spot to sit, because my dad didn't want to stand up in the back.
And for Italians, that's really extraordinary, because we don't even get to eat until after Mass.
That's right.
So the need to say, oh yeah,
we were there.
The Americans, they go to like.
They provided
or
entertainment.
Yeah.
There was a choir.
The carols,
there was always something. Yeah, there was some form of entertainment. It wasn't like you were just standing out there waiting for mass to start. Good God, we never would have done that. Give me a break. Like, no, absolutely not.
Well, we've started to talk about this next topic, and I can't believe that we are at like almost 50 minutes into the show. I have to say, I'm so loving this. If you're watching, let us know in the comments whether you enjoy this new format or not. It's just, in addition to the fact that I just really vibe with the three of our guests and love them genuinely and fully, this just felt so natural that I thought we must be coming up on 30 minutes. And I just looked at the clock and it's at 49 minutes. So the final question that I want to ask is about what I call embracing the ashes. And that is sort of the topic, the idea behind the Inner Alchemy series and podcast is about alchemy. It's about doing that alchemy, that spiritual work, and transforming, turning those experiences into transformation and growth in our work and in our lives. And so, I'll go last on this question. And Terry, I'm going to ask you to go second to last, because I think there'll be some overlap and dovetailing. And so, Megan and Dominic, if you don't mind sharing, what in what ways have you experienced, or do you experience those moments of transformation, those moments of alchemy, when that experience of compassion fatigue, the only way out is through, they say. And so those moments of going through that experience, do you find that it transforms your spiritual practice, your personal life, your career, your outlook, your ability to not smack people in the head with a chair? Share your insights on that.
I mean, while I do enjoy a good smacking in the head of other people with a chair from time to time, I'm just joking. But am I? For me, I think that the ability to pull back and recognize that, we always go back to the relationship, right? It's every tarot reader's like most hated reading, like the love reading, is he cheating on me? If you have to get a tarot reader to read for you, is he cheating on you? There's a big problem within the relationship that goes far beyond this reading, right? So I always take it back to that reading. And my ability to pull back and realize that my frustration at that situation and my inability to energetically connect with that client and to feel compassion for that client in that moment really is not about that client. It is about me. That, I think, was a big transformative experience for me, to be like, okay, do I really hate this person? Or am I projecting something onto this person? Like, is this fears about my own relationship? Is this compassion fatigue? Is there something deeper going on within me that I don't want to read this because I'm fearful of that? What is really going on here? Can I examine this so that I can do better? Is it that I need to pull back and take a break, or is it that I need to actually check myself here and do something different or better? I think that led me to a place where I was able to recognize when it is my issue and I'm not able to truly effectively read on particular subject matter for clients, because there are some times when clients will hit a nerve in me and I really have difficulty effectively reading. There are some things that I just find really, really triggering in myself that clients will come to me and ask me to read on, and it's difficult to effectively read. And so I have to find just a place within myself where I have to say, okay, self, can you do this or can you not? And if I can't, then I have to step away from the reading and refer out. Or, yes, I can do this. I'm going to put my own biases aside. I'm going to put my own projections aside, and I'm going to effectively, interpret the message and read. And so that the ability to work through that actually has been very transformative for me and very enlightening for me, learning about myself through the lens of reading for other people. Why is this triggering for me?
That's powerful. So the transformation, the experience of the fatigue becomes the fuel that you use to bring about, or the ingredients that you use, the materia magica, to bring about that transformation. That's
right.
Beautiful.
Because sometimes it's my own shadow work that has to be done. It's not that I'm experiencing compassion fatigue. It's that it is uncovering something within myself, that it is shadow work within myself that has to be done. And I'm just avoiding it and avoiding it and avoiding it and acting like it's burnout, but really it's just something that I'm avoiding. That has happened to me.
Right on. I love where this is going. Dominic?
Everything that Megan says, 100%. I have to say, I've had those conundrums too. Shadow work also is something essential, and as both of us are tarot readers, we know that connection with tarot and the archetypes and the Jungian psychology. As far as the transformation, I'm going to take it back to those Christmas Eve or those Easter Vigil moments, when that liminal space of the year, where you just feel like everything that you've gone through in that period just seems so overwhelming and daunting. And it's how can you help other people because you're going through your own shit? And then just like, Christmas morning happens, Easter happens, the sun comes up, and you realize, new things are coming on their way. This year for me particularly, numerological speaking, like my tarot card for this year is death. And, last year was the Hangman, which was like a whole, I have to be honest, not one of my favorite cards, because it's like, but last year I kind of explored it more and I grew to love it. And so I'm kind of looking at death this year too. Like, okay, what needs to die? What needs to be reborn?
Right on. We could not have asked for a more perfect segue. I think for our listeners and viewers, I just love when these things happen, and they happen all the time. We just have to bring our awareness to it, I think. Terry, go ahead and kind of take it away. That all three of these answers are going to dovetail. I know it.
I have to give a gift to Dominic, actually, because while you were talking, I pulled one of my tarot cards, which is the Voyager deck, and I pulled death. And that's what I'd like to leave with, is that we allow burnout to have its own little death. I don't believe in burnout. I don't believe that burnout leads to transformation and growth. I believe that if we're doing our transformation and growth, we don't go to burnout. Because burnout, although it's a common term, and it's a common phenomena, and it exists, I don't know that we would ever get to it if we were really doing the inner work that we need to do for ourselves. And whether it's putting ourselves up on a pedestal and being someone's savior, or whatever it is, we need to take those tech Shabbats. We need to do our inner work, because we're never going to be who we really need to be to ourselves and everyone else if we don't do that inner work. And it's fucking tough. It is the worst. It is not easy to be a spiritual leader. It's not easy to do what we do. And it's not easy for nurses and flight attendants and firefighters and everyone else that saves the world. But it's what we've chosen to do for now. And it's by acknowledging that, supporting one another without judgment, and just being there to be there. That's the transformation, the growth. And we don't get to tell people that it's time for them to grow. It's up to them. And we just get to stand by, because, again, we're not in charge. God or spirit or universal power, whatever you believe in, is in charge. And regardless, all is well. One of the practices that Gianmichael and I share is spiritual mind treatment, which I'm also teaching a class on right now. And so I'm very aware of trying to teach what I say I believe. And it's very much about being in because my belief is that we are all one, that when I do treatment work for you or I pray for you, that I am not praying for you, I'm praying for myself, because in the allness, if it's clear within my mind, it's clear within everyone's mind. So I need to get clear for you. And that's why you would hire me to do that. But it's so easy to try to help people all the time and to forget that if we don't help ourselves through this, we don't have our dark nights of the soul, if we don't have our demons, if we don't do work with them, then we're not going to be as effective as we can to help others.
And then we don't experience that transformation. You said the work isn't easy, but it's simple.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it all. And I think subconsciously, when I reached out to the panel to be here tonight, One of the things that is absolutely evident, I'm sure, to everyone who's tuned in, is that this panel may have experienced compassion fatigue, possibly at a higher level than most people, but they have never experienced burnout. This panel, because if this panel had experienced burnout because of the passion and the intensity and the wisdom and the experience that they bring to the table, they wouldn't be here tonight talking on this show.
Yeah.
So the if you're listening and you think that you're on the verge of burnout, that you're you just can't do this anymore, understand that is probably not burnout, or you wouldn't be listening. You would have turned this off in the first couple of minutes. What it is the wisdom within you that's saying maybe it's time to look at what you're doing. There's more than one way to serve. And so, for me, that came up a whole lot. Those who have known me for a while and have followed me will remember that about 3 months ago, I said, I'm no longer doing readings for the general public. I'm done. A number of people lovingly and beautifully said, "Oh, I wish you wouldn't do that. I'm gonna miss that." I said I'll still do occasionally when I feel led to do a scopa reading, an Italian and Sicilian form of divination. In general, like this is a reading that I just say, speak to me for the common good, for the beloved community. I may still do those, but I no longer want to offer as a service doing readings, because for me, it was time to move on. It would be easy to say, oh, I'm burning out, or I'm experiencing spiritual burnout and get depressed or get anxious about it. But I understood what it meant was it's time to write a new chapter. It's still the same book. It's still that life, that calling of service, that calling of compassion, that calling of being present. But it can take a new form, and it's okay for it to take a new form. If you're feeling dread at having to do anything other than, we talked about, I dread having to hear, somebody's petty relationship stories. But I truly believe that every time I feel that, it's because there's something within me I haven't forgiven. At times when I allowed those petty relationship issues to stand in the way of my being present. And so maybe I need to hear it one more time so that when I'm done, I can say, you know what? Yeah, he or she was a pain in the ass, but I've been a pain in the ass too. And maybe I need to just forgive myself for all those times that I've been a pain in the ass and know something better about this situation and know something better about me. And therefore, if you've heard me say in the classes, if essential unity is real, then whatever is true about me is true about you and everyone else. And so if I know a better thing about me, a greater truth about me, if I recognize my true nature, or if I'm having a hard time doing that, if out of compassion I recognize your true nature, we both get healed. We both transform. And not only us, but people that we may never meet are transformed, because we change the entire world the moment we change our minds. The moment we use that creativity to be in the moment, we're creating change. And so I want to thank everybody who's tuned in tonight, but I especially want to thank Megan and Dominic and Terry for just giving so generously and so raw and so honest of themselves. I can't believe we went over the hour. I do apologize to the three of you and to our viewers. I promise we'll get a little bit better at that. Probably not much, but we're only 5 minutes over. So thank you for being here. Be sure to share this if you found it useful, share it. You can find replays of some of our past shows on The Brew by going to thebrewlive.com. You will also have the opportunity to hear more from Dr. Terry Drew Karanen on February 11th, I believe it is, when he'll be our guest talking about his upcoming book. And you'll hear, I'm sure, from these incredible people as we've got amazing things that are unfolding in this new year. And like I said, if that's true for me, if that's true for us, then it must be true for you. That's what Inner Alchemy is all about. Thank you for inviting us into your home tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take care, everybody.